I recently asked you guys if you feel like you play up to your potential in games, and over 75% of you said that you struggle to play well in games. Now, initially I was shocked. How could such a large percentage of players feel like they're not doing well in games? But then I remembered something. When I was a young hooper, I struggled with the same exact thing. Whether it was my confidence or feeling like I wasn't scoring enough or whatever. More often than not, I would leave my games frustrated, feeling like I left something on the table, like I could have done more. But here's the thing about my basketball journey, and here's where you really need to be honest with yourself. I didn't start really training consistently until the end of my freshman year of high school. And when I say training consistently, I mean I was in the gym practically every day, working on my game, obsessed with improving. So looking back, before my freshman year, how could I have expected to play up to my potential if I wasn't even working on my game? However, just because you are training doesn't automatically mean you're going to start performing how you want to in games either. Like I mentioned, I started training really hard at the end of my freshman year of high school, so if I do the math, which makes me feel pretty old, that means I have been working on my game at a high level for over 10 years. And over those 10 years, I have seen my game grow in small increments, not leaps and bounds. In fact, I would say that this season I'm having in my first year playing professionally overseas feels like the first time I've really unlocked my offensive game. That's over 10 years of training to get to this moment. The point is, growth in basketball takes time. In some cases, it takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And if you're like me, you might never feel like you're playing to your potential, because the reality is there's always room to grow. Back in my freshman year of high school, I changed my shot. I went from a 2-motion over the head shot to a 1-motion shot. And when I was going through that transition, my shot felt terrible. I remember airballing threes in my workouts and even my games because I was trying to figure out how to shoot with this new form. It was a real struggle for me and it was really frustrating. However, about 8 months of consistent training later, when my sophomore season came around, my shot was a lot better. I was definitely a better shooter than I had been the year before. What I realized is that basketball is a sport of gradual progress, and to see results in games takes a lot of patience. As I continued to train, my shot got a little better from my sophomore to my junior year, and then a little more from my junior to my senior year, and by the time I got to college, I was really confident in my shot. Think about it like this. With any skill development, there is going to be a transition between acquiring the skill and performing that skill. For instance, just because you work on your floater for a week doesn't mean you're going to be able to make a floater in your next game or even recognize the opportunity to take a floater in your next game. Confidence is built from using a new skill step by step. And don't worry, I'm going to talk more about confidence later. Anyway, first you train a skill in your workouts, then go find someone to play one-on-one against and start using what you have worked on. Next, hopefully you can find a pickup game or during live situations in practice and try out that new skill in those situations. And then last of all, you will start to feel more comfortable using that skill in a game. Even then, of course, you won't be super successful in your games right away. You might miss some floaters before you start to make them a little more consistently, and then a little more, and then a little more, until that floater becomes a consistent part of your arsenal. The same is true with any skill you're trying to attain. There's another big issue I see in younger players that could have an impact on their success in games. You might be someone who trains really hard in the summer, but then when basketball season comes around, you stop all your skill development. This really becomes an issue when there is no skill development being done in your practices, which I know is common at the lower levels. This is a big no-no. You need to continue working on your shot, your handle, your finishing, all these skills as the season progresses. This will help you stay sharp in your games, or else all that work you put in the summer will start to go away. Similarly, I think pregame warm-ups are more important than most kids realize. If you have the time to get shots up before a game, please take advantage of it. My pregame shooting looks something like this. About 20 to 30 minutes of catch and shoots, stand still and on the move. Then about 10 minutes of off the dribble shooting, whether that's coming off of screens and transition. And then about 10 minutes of touch shots around the basket, layups, floaters, those kind of things. Finding some rhythm before a game, especially with your shot, is really important. Speaking of shooting, let's talk about that. In high school, and even in college to some extent, I would base whether or not I had a good game on how well I shot the ball. If I was 2 for 4 from 3, then that was a good game. And if I was 0 for 3, then that was a bad game. Now here's the issue with that. Shooting 0 for 3 doesn't mean you had a bad shooting game, it just means you didn't shoot. How can you know if your shot is feeling good or not if you only take 3 shots? You could easily make your next 2, be 2 for 5 from 3, and now you're shooting 40% in the game. This is why worrying about percentages during a game is so detrimental to confidence in basketball. There are going to be highs and lows, of course, but imagine if Kobe Kobe Bryant stopped shooting the ball after he started a game 0 for 3 from the field. And then after the game, he thought to himself, well, I just didn't play well today. First of all, Kobe would never do that, of course, because his mentality is too elite. And I know you aren't Kobe, but you have to stop thinking that success in basketball only comes from makes and misses. You need to start changing your perspective on what playing well in basketball actually means. There are so many ways to impact winning that aren't scoring the basketball. I've talked about this a million times on this channel, but if you can start to realize that you don't need to score 30 points to play well, then you will do the things that are actually in your control more often and you will play better. Let's get to maybe the most important part of this conversation. A lot of you responded to that post that you don't play well in games because you lose confidence. Confidence is so tricky to me, especially because it's something I have struggled so much with over the course of my basketball career. If you struggle with confidence, just know you're not alone. In fact, I would argue that almost every basketball player has struggled with confidence at some point in their basketball lives. Yes, you can try using affirmations and tell yourself that you're a good player. However, the main thing that I have realized throughout my long basketball career is that if you're relying on success to determine how confident you are, you will almost always fail. Think about it. Do you think Kobe's confidence comes solely from whether or not he makes shots?
You know, a lot of times I've seen players, even myself, you know, when I was younger, being consumed by a particular fear, and to the point where you're saying, okay, nah, it's not good to feel fear. I shouldn't be nervous in this situation, like nah. And it does nothing but grow. Versus stepping back and saying, yeah, I am nervous about the situation. Yeah, I am fearful about the situation. Well, what am I afraid of? It doesn't exist. It's not existent. What the hell does that mean? Seriously, what does failure mean? It doesn't exist.
There are a lot of things in basketball that are outside of your control. Your coaches, your teammates, injuries, the other team. So if you're trying to increase your confidence based on your success on the court, you're relying on all these things that are outside your control, and therefore your confidence will be brittle. When things are going well, sure, you may be confident. But as soon as things go badly, that confidence will come crashing down. This is so different from the way we think of someone like Kobe as confident. Kobe's confidence doesn't come from how many shots he makes or how many games his team wins. And it certainly doesn't come from the validation of other people telling him how good he is. Instead, his confidence ultimately comes from his trust in himself. Kobe has proved this because even if he hasn't had the best game, he will still always want the ball in his hands when the game is on the line. A lot of the great clutch players are like this. Damian Lillard is a great example. They trust themselves to make a play in the final moments, and even if they don't make that shot, their confidence doesn't waver. This comes from an understanding that failure is inevitable, and ultimately, failure is a good thing. That is how you learn. By embracing this fact, like so many great players have, you will play more freely and feel more confident on the court. I'll leave you with this on confidence. I heard this quote recently from Coach Taylor over at Deep Game.
The player who doesn't need to play well to feel good about themselves is the player that's going to play better.
Allowing yourself the freedom to fail will ultimately allow you to succeed. So if you're not playing as well as you would like in your games, you need to ask yourself a few questions. First, is it because you aren't training your skills consistently enough? If you are, then are you allowing yourself to have patience so you can move from acquiring those skills to performing those skills? And if confidence is the thing that is holding you back, then are you too focused on the results of your games and not enough on the process of getting better while allowing yourself the freedom to fail? Let me know in the comments why you think you struggle and what you are doing about it to improve. And if you want to improve your mentality when you are in your games, watch this video on the uncomfortable truth for young basketball players. As always, I appreciate you all. Thank you for watching. I will see you soon.